we are doing an AMA, which is Ask Me Anything, with Joe Bryant, who is our executive director of the Open3D Foundation, which is the foundation where Open3D Engine is hosted. Essentially, he has a bunch of questions that he has already prepped to answer for you all, but really we want to ask you all to ask your questions. You can do this in a few different ways. If you're not comfortable with coming off mute and asking your question that way, feel free to throw it in the chat where Joe will find it or I will. And then if you're not willing to read it out loud, I'm happy to do that for you. But essentially, this is your time to ask Joe literally anything that you want to know. So with that, Joe, do you want to give an introduction to yourself and then we can kick things off?
Yes. So I am John Bryant. Everybody calls me Joe. And I am the executive director for the Open3D Foundation. I started working on O3DE many years before it actually went public, as open source. Quite a long history. I moved over from Amazon, who created O3D in its initial form, to the foundation. And I've been the executive director for the last year and a half, a little over a year and a half for this. I have a long history in games. I have worked on 25 games that have actually released across a variety of platforms. So for this, I would prefer, getting asked questions that, people are curious about and answer those. But again, I do have a list of questions, basically commonly asked questions, usually when I'm meeting with companies or individuals or on Discord. These are, a list of questions that I get, almost every time. And so I have those that I can go over as well. So I'd like to open it up for anyone who would like to ask some questions about O3DE, about the foundation, anything along those lines. And welcome, Mark. Okay. If there are no questions, then I'll start going through my list. Yeah, you can feel free to drop them in chat as well. And then Naomi will read them out and then I'll answer. So I'll start off with why O3DE, why open source. And this is something that John Kennedy can actually speak to as well, since he was involved in this whole process. So O3D was created to provide a high quality, feature-rich alternative to currently existing engines that are out there. Big reason is at the time, and still continuing to this day, some of the larger engines were changing how they their licensing, how they charge, what you can and cannot do with the engines. And as an example, with Unreal, as far as I'm aware, they do not allow you, to use it for any gambling type application. So Unity tends to get used for that. But the reason why we went open source is because commercial company, well, one, to provide a free alternative that is free from the licensing restrictions. So basically no strings attached. So when you take O3DE, you know what you're getting. Things aren't going to change out from under you. The license is going to change, and you can move forward. You don't have to pay a percentage of profits for using the engine, etc. It also was meant to be. There are plenty of open source engines out there. I mean, because you have like Godot is one of the bigger ones, but this was meant to be targeting large scale projects as well. So this will enable users. They can create small indie projects, or they can create large scale AAA style games and applications as well in this. The other thing we provide is a platform for simulation and robotics, thanks to Robotech AI. They have created a ROS2 gem, which is extremely performant. They've created a bunch of Gen AI framework platforms, which I believe they call RAI or RAI. And we've had also Huawei has contributed a bunch of stuff, including recently a particle editor. So it's so being open source gives us the advantage that we only implement features that either members of the foundation or our users are asking for. Because we're a nonprofit, we don't care about making money off the engine. Mostly, we operate off of donations, which help keeps lights on, allows me to do my job and to travel to different events to get the word out. Allows for marketing, allows for legal, because open source projects can be targeted by trolls, essentially, that patent trolls in particular. So it's good to have that legal protection. The but because we only care about what our users want and our contributors in particular, since they are the doers of the project, they pretty much dictate what we have and don't have in the engine. And our members, have a really, really big say in the roadmap. So therefore, we do not release features that are purely for us to make money. Because other engines, they have a profit to worry about, and so they will release things like ad systems and frameworks that basically they charge for people to use them, and none of that exists in O3DE. Instead, like I said, it's all for the user. It's what people want. It also means that the size of our engine it can be a lot leaner than the others as well, because again, we only contain the features that people want. Any comments on that? So John, since you're involved in the very early days of this, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Sure, that was a good description of the purpose of the engine. I think, when we originally came up with it, there was some key concepts that we were trying to achieve. It was, around the time of the release of Unreal 5 and all sorts of things. And what we saw was that for AAA games, the whole market was captured. And you're either a large company who owned your own engine, which was incredibly expensive to maintain, or you were using Unreal, and in some cases Unity, but mostly Unreal. And Unreal sorry, Epic was a great partner of Amazon, but we just really believed that there needed to be an open source option, that that anyone could use to build a AAA game and completely own the IP. And that's why we put it on such a permissive license. Additionally, we saw that there was a new type of engine required, for what was coming. So we haven't quite got the metaverse yet, but still believe it's coming.
I
And
am actually working on that. So
and the key components we saw that we needed to provide for people to build kind of the next generation metaverse was that the engine needed to be modular. Like, different people needed different
yeah.
capabilities, and so we made sure that the components were composable, and you could use what you needed rather than the whole engine. And that means you can optimize for different metaverse use cases or different 3D use cases, and that's why we can do robotics. The other thing was, renderers cost a lot of money. Advanced renderers that properly use the hardware are incredibly expensive to build and maintain. And so it was going to take a centralized effort to actually build a modern renderer that was open source. And that's kind of a lot of the spend was really that we got from the kind of the sponsors of the project had to go towards building that renderer so that would actually be useful for people building AAA projects or building kind of first class 3D capabilities. So that was a huge reason that we kind of sponsored it as Amazon and got all of the other companies in as well, so that we could build build an engine that had a AAA capable renderer. And then there were other things like, there's a great no code editor that we upgraded, and we really wanted all of the companies building both games and metaverse experiences and robotics to be able to kind of own their own destiny. So yeah, lots of reasons. And it sounds like we've continued the mission really well. So yeah.
Yeah. So there's a company that's interested in using O3DE for metaverse, and their primary want is the renderer. So they hit like everything you just talked about um, with that. So okay, any other comments on this topic? Like I said, feel free to come off mute at any point.
We have a quiet
Okay,
group today.
go ahead.
No,
Go
I was
ahead.
saying we just have a quiet group today.
Yeah, well, it's early in the morning for most of them. So
I guess I could ask a question about that. What is that okay?
oh yeah, totally fine. It's encouraged.
Could you talk about how the members of the foundation kind of steer the direction of O3DE? And I guess, are the members still interested in keeping it game engine focused?
So there's actually a split, which is good. It's a very good thing. So you're actually allowing me to go right into some of my other questions. Because so what so one, I'll start with for O3D and for the foundation and the board in particular, we have kind of three pillars that we look at for O3DE. These are gaming, so companies using O3DE to make games, mobile, PC, Linux. We're one of the few very solid Linux engines to create games on. Second is robotics and simulation. There are companies that have based, their entire revenue stream on using O3DE for robotics and simulations. And then we have film and video has just come on the radar in 2025. And that is because we actually had several VFX artists come in and say, hey, we need an alternative that runs on Linux natively because our pipelines are Linux and it's annoying to have to go into Windows to do particular things with other engines and then go back into Linux. And since we natively support Linux, that gives us a huge advantage there. We still have some other features we need to implement first. Like, we need to make sure we have a solid USD implementation because pretty much all three of those pillars use USD or coalescing around USD. So yeah, so now as far as members goes, so we basically have three tiers of members. We have the board, so premier members. They have seats on the board. They pay for that, and they primarily are the main ones that keep the lights on for the foundation. But they have direct input into my roadmap. They have the direct input into the kind of what events we go to. They will, help steer the direction of O3DE pretty strongly in that respect and determine how we spend money. Then we have general members. Now, general members, for every 5 general members, there's one board seat that they collectively determine, like, okay, which company is going to have that board seat, and then that company will have the board seat. Until last year, it was Carbonated, and now it's Robotech AI that has the board seat. General membership is tiered based on the size of the company. So smaller companies will start out at like 2,500. Larger companies will cap out at 50,000, and 50,000 is the highest. Whereas for a premier, it's roughly 250,000 to get a direct board seat. For both of those, we work with them closely for marketing. So we'll do a lot of co-marketing stuff for events, things along that nature. So there are, several benefits of being a member. And then our final tier, which is free, is the associate members. Now, the associate members don't really say how, what direction we head into and stuff like that. They'll provide feedback, but associate members can only be either educational institutions or other nonprofits. And usually when someone's an associate member, it means that we're collaborating with them in some capacity, or they want to collaborate with O3DE. For educational institutions, it'll be things like they're using it in their courses or have it as an option. So a lot of technical schools, and we just added a new one from India a couple of months ago. So did that answer your question, Nana?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
Okay. Well, let me know if it didn't fully, or if you have any follow-ups. So I'm happy
Okay.
to follow up on that.
Thanks.
Okay, let's see. As far as something I get asked for is why use O3D instead of Unity and Unreal? Well, the first answer is cost. Which we covered before. It's an Apache 2 license. People can contribute under MIT as well. They both are very, very permissive licenses. And what that means is you get full access to 3.5 million lines of code, and as well as our binaries. And yes, you are correct, Shauna, that games, sims, and film is not a zero-sum game. So because we, for instance, when we do things for robotics and simulation, is an add. Nothing is subtracted from the engine at all whatsoever. Same thing for gaming, and then same thing for film and video, especially VFX for film and video. And the reason for that is if you look at the Venn diagram of overlap on engine features, as Shauna pointed out yesterday, it's almost a circle because almost 90% of the features are the same across all three use cases. And if you look at like a simulation and robotics team, they are game teams. They are, the only thing is they have the addition of some scientists to do the programming for the robots. But otherwise, and the same thing for VFX. VFX is really art heavy. They do have, engineers. They tend not to have a lot of designers. It's mostly, technical artists, and artists in general. But across the board, there's so much overlap between for the three use cases that it just makes sense to, pursue them as we can. And again, contributors are doing a lot of the work there. So if, like, for instance, the VFX engineer comes in and says, hey, we'll help, contribute X, Y, and Z so that we can use O3DE and film and video, the foundation is not going to say no to that, as long as it doesn't subtract from our other use cases, which is, gaming and then simulation and robotics. And what really, really, really helps with that is the modularity, which is the kind of core feature of the architecture of O3DE. Is that modularity where we can add, where a user can add and subtract things as they want to the engine. So the modularity is one of the big differences we have between Unity and Unreal. Being open source is the other big difference, and for financial, that's a really, really important difference. And the fact that, again, we focus on features and not on monetization, that's another big difference. Just how we operate versus how, basically, how a nonprofit operates versus how a for-profit company would operate. Because again, profit's not our goal. Our goal is to provide a product that serves a need, to the world. So any other questions or comments on that before I move on? Okay. A very common question I get, which confuses a lot of people when I talk to them about it, is, they'll ask like, hey, can I resell or start a business around O3DE? Or, do I need to pay you guys? Do I need to revenue share? The answer is yes, you can start a business using O3DE. We will celebrate your business if you do so. And then the second is no, because we're a nonprofit, we can't do revenue sharing. So the only way we bring money in is through donations, through memberships. And I think, education as well can, we could bring money in through that as well, like, having certifications and things like that for people to take. But beyond that, that's it. Like, we do not make any money, and we do not care to make money off of the engine itself. The other thing is that if you are a contributor or a member of the O3D community, marketing, which is May, who's in here, they'd love to promote your story and experiences with O3DE. So you can feel free to reach out to her via May. Can you put that in the chat, the link? Or, well, never mind, I got it. So this is the email address. You can reach out to them that way, and they'll be happy. And we've already done that, for instance, with Porcupine Factory. We're talking about the work that they did on their recent gem. But yeah, and that's one of the features with memberships in particular. We work really close with foundation members on highlighting, their experiences, their work, what they're doing, any products they built off of O3DE. Okay, so any questions before I move on? And again, please ask questions. I'll be very happy if people are asking questions. Okay, what is the future of O3DE and what pillars are we aiming for? So I already talked about the pillars, robotic simulation, games, and film and video. And it's interesting because film and video wasn't a pillar. It was actually the community who determined that that should be a pillar for us, which is awesome. The future of O3DE is we are going to continue to focus on quality. We are going to, because if an engine isn't usable, it doesn't matter what features we have. And so quality is our number one priority, no matter what year it is. And it will continue to do so. And we're seeing a lot of dividends from focusing on quality. So we're going to continue focusing on twice a year major releases. That cadence seems to work okay, and it doesn't burn out our release teams and all of our contributors and things like that. We were also going to be filling in feature gaps as needed. This includes things like a Mac OS version, which we do have a Mac OS version that runs. It's just not stable. And so if anyone wants to help us get that stable, we'd be very happy for that. Full support for Fedora packages as well, thanks to Red Hat, who is a member of the foundation. And we're going to be adding support for other Linux distributions commonly used in film and video, like Alma Linux is an example of that. We are, one of our very large priorities for 2026 in particular is USD support, because again, all of our pillar industries are coalescing around USD, which I'm very happy about because it's the one format to rule them all. And it'll be nice not to have to support, the 7 or 8 different formats currently in robotics, and the 3 or 4 primary formats in games. Just having one format that we read and write would be awesome for that. It's a lot less work too once we have USD implemented. Working to improve the Gen AI framework. This is particularly necessary for robotics, but also has benefits for games and film and video. But yeah, that is currently our priorities. I'm gonna, another question I have much lower down, but I'll go ahead and answer that now, which is when will we have the roadmap for 2026 done? It will be finished no later than October 15th. So, and then that we'll have it up. You'll see it changing between now and then on the website. But my goal is to get that put together before the 15th. Any questions on that or disagreements?
You mentioned that USD is going to be the focus. Do you have any sort of companies with contributors who are willing to sort of, you have
Yes.
basic support, but to like sort of mature, making it more mature?
Yes. So I'm talking with NVIDIA, talking with Apple. We are working to join the AOUSD, which is the primary kind of nonprofit for that standard, which consists of a lot of companies. We were featured in a Birds of a Feather talk for the ASWF and AOUSD at SIGGRAPH this year. Specifically about USD, and in particular, our they're converting our mascot over completely to USD. So USD is extremely serious, and yes, we have got people that are starting to line up to help us implement USD. And I know JT also has been working on that as well. You know, finding people to help. So with that, any questions? Sid, did I answer your question fully?
Yes. Although I do have another question, maybe not same
Yes.
as USD. I was going to ask, just maybe anyone else is wondering, are there any games that are in the pipeline that we might expect
You're
in the
hitting
coming?
like several of my
Yeah.
questions, which is
Okay.
good.
All right, good.
So as far as games in the pipeline goes, so if I understand correctly, you're just wanting to know like, hey, what are the projects? I'm going to talk about games and robotics and some film video stuff. So for games, there are actually 5 projects in the pipeline right now. 2 of them are public, and I can talk about. So that's Carbonated's Mad World game, which is mobile. And then we have Echo Game Labs Windows game, which is, you can go on Steam, look up Reverb, and you can see everything about that game. You know, because they have screenshots and videos and stuff like that up about it. So those are the 2 I'm allowed to talk about. There are 3 others that I can't talk about that are in the pipeline. One is very large. The others are a little bit smaller in scale, but but there are you know, several projects from a games perspective, you know, in the pipeline. So hopefully before the end of the year, we'll start seeing those actually hit the market. For robotics, there are a couple of companies that are using O3D internally for robotics efforts, and we've got several companies that are trying out O3D right now in their pipelines, you know, just to make sure it's a good fit. And I'm having talks with some other companies as well about using O3DE. But again, these companies tend not to like to talk about what they're doing internally. The only one that's really public about using O3DE is Robotech.ai currently, and they're doing a lot of work, and they're the reason we have our robotics packages. So big shout out to Robotech for all the work that they're doing there. And for film and video, so we've got a couple of companies that are taking a look. There's no one who's actually seriously using it right now, because there's some things we need to get working. You know, for instance, Fedora packaging, which Red Hat is working on, as well as, you know, being able to run on Alma Linux and other Linux versions that film and video relies on as well, before film and video can fully use us in their pipelines. But they are definitely interested. It's just up to us to get those things in so they can. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Can I
There's
ask something sort of similar on that?
Yeah.
Of the 5 games that you mentioned that are in production, are they, do you know, or I guess, are you able to say, are they using O3D in its entirety, or are they just using just pieces like the Atom
So
render?
4 of the 5 are using O3D in its entirety.
Okay.
The 4th one is using very large parts of O3DE in their own custom pipeline.
Okay. Interesting. Cool.
Are you-
Thanks.
are you- I had a question. Are all 5 expected somewhere around 2026?
Now, the
Or
2 that have been announced, we're expecting to be into 2025, early 2026. The others, don't know. I mean, couple of them are still pretty early in their pipelines, which makes it really difficult. You know, it's best guess as to, you know, even from their side as to when they're going to release, because, you know, projects usually run late. So yeah, but two have stated, you know, that they will, you know, try to be out before the end of 2025. But with games in particular, it's as much of an art as it is a science. And so a lot of the, you know, saying we're going to release on this date is as much gut as it is, you know, math, essentially, for figuring those dates out. Any other questions on that topic? Okay, so I'm seeing, what about audio for the engine, Wise and Mini Audio? So, you know, Wise and Mini Audio both are supported audio engines for O3DE. I've seen a lot of talk on Discord about expanding Mini Audio in particular. So Wise, which is its own separate company, will need to, you know, update their implementation for O3DE, you know, as they want. Now we are also open to other audio engines, but again, that is primarily up to contributors to determine like what we support and don't support. So if a contributor really, really wants a particular audio engine in, and they're willing to make it as a gem, which is very important because that helps isolate code from the core, then we're not going to say no to an implementation. Like I've talked with FMod at GDC. They are interested. They're looking at our numbers just to make sure that it's, you know, worth the cost and effort to do so. But I know FMod's been asked about quite a few times because that's a pretty popular audio engine as well. Did that answer your question, Reese?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Okay, so one of the things that I get asked about is what is the purpose of the foundation versus the engine? You know, how are they different? So the foundation is the nonprofit organization, so the Open3D Foundation, that leads efforts for the project, which is O3DE. So the difference between a foundation and the project is that the foundation basically owns the code, and, you know, they're responsible for it. They handle all the legal issues, they handle all the marketing, they handle, you know, a lot of the day-to-day for the project itself. And the way our foundation is set up is we can actually have multiple projects underneath us, and I'm actually talking to a few people about that, having them join and have projects that are tangential to O3DE, you know, under our foundation as well. And but think of the foundation as the governance of the project. Then the project itself is basically responsible for a product of some sort. So for us, it's the Open3D engine, which is, you know, it's pretty cut and dry as to what that is. And so it's called the O3DE project because they're responsible for making sure O3DE gets out. So where the foundation has a board that makes, you know, helps make major decisions. They have an executive director, which executes on a lot of those decisions, which is myself. We have a program manager, which is Naomi, and we have marketing, which is May. The project itself is made up of the contributors, the maintainers. So maintainers are the only people who can actually get code into the repo. So they have access to that magic button that says, you know, commit code. We have reviewers whose reviews count towards the 1 or 2 review requirement for PRs. And then we have contributors, which, you know, they're the ones. Oh yes, we welcomed Crystal to our marketing team as well, and Crystal is awesome. But the contributors do the heavy lifting generally, well, because they are the ones writing the code for the reviewers and the maintainers to, you know, massage and get into our code base. Without contributors, we'd be dead in the water. And so a huge call out and thank you to everyone who's contributed code, into the project, because, without you guys, the project wouldn't grow at all whatsoever. It would be stagnant. Now, I've already talked about the tiers for the foundation, the board versus general members versus associate members. And we also, so the foundation has a technical advisory committee that has a chair on it. Right now, that chair is Nick Lawson. And they also get a board seat as well. And the responsibility of the TAC, which is what we call it, is to help coordinate between multiple projects. Right now, there's not a lot for them to do because we only have the one project. But as we get more projects in, each project has a person on the TAC that represents that project, and then the TAC helps with things like communication across projects, any coordination that needs to happen in collaboration as well. And having a unified voice for all of these projects up to the board itself. But that really is, the foundations is they oversee the project, and the project itself is the actual product and all the people who are contributing to that product to make it happen. Any questions around that? And while I'm talking about contributors, one of the things that we really need is documentation people to help Shauna, who's the lead for the documentation team, stay above water for all the features that are coming in and all the changes, et cetera. So yeah, if you're interested in helping with documentation at all, or want advice, like you've created a new gym or something like that, and you're like, hey, how do I get this into the documentation? Talk to Shauna, because I know she would really like to help there for just getting things, caught up, and as we grow, making sure we can keep up with that growth. So Naomi, is there anything else you would add about the differences between the foundation versus the project?
No, I think you covered it perfectly, honestly. As Joe mentioned, like the foundation was just created to kind of like help get the funds to keep O3DE running. But basically, we're just a neutral hub, and it's mainly for the governance piece of things. But again, if you have any questions post-meeting, you can feel free to ping me or Joe, and I'm happy to answer any more.
Also, Naomi, you just hit on a very important part about the foundation, which is neutrality. We are very neutral. We will not, so as an example, cloud services, we will not say use Amazon versus use Microsoft, Azure versus use Google. Instead, we want all the options available, but it's up to users and those companies themselves to determine, who uses what. The foundation will never get involved in recommending a particular solution to people because we have to maintain that neutral stance. Because we do have, even on our board, we do have competing companies on the board, and they need to be able to work, I guess, peacefully with each other and constructively to get things done. So we maintain a very strong neutrality stance. Okay, so our foundation is connected to Linux Foundation proper, as we are a sub foundation underneath the Linux Foundation. So the advantage to that is we get access to all the resources of the Linux Foundation, which has been incredible. I've only been here for like a year and a half or so, and it's super impressive. And I value all of them, but legal has been extremely important for us because we're a game engine. We are being, and also simulation of robotics and film and video. And so we get targeted by patent trolls in particular because of like the graphics engine, audio, things like that. So they help protect us against that. Okay, so any other questions on that before I move on to the next question? Okay, so one of the things that a couple of people have asked me in the past. Okay. I am about to answer that right now. So that is actually the question I'm on. So Andre, yes, we do coordinate. So how we do it. So right now, the big ones we're coordinating with are AOUSD, the ASWF.
So I'm sorry, not to
Yeah.
stop you. Do you want us to read the question out first so everyone, just in case people
Okay.
actually
Yeah.
you in the chat?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Perfect. So basically, everyone in the chat, Andre dropped, curious about, I would like to ask how O3DE/O3DF cooperates with other projects of the Linux Foundation, specifically film industry like Academy Software Foundation or OpenUSD.
So yeah, and I literally was about to to do that question. So good timing, Andre. So the primary foundations we are working with currently are AOUSD, which that has a lot of companies like NVIDIA. I think Apple's a part of them as well, but and Pixar. So they are, and that's our primary means for USD. And getting support for USD and implementation. In fact, we do have someone from Pixar who wants to talk at a future Connect meeting about USD and engines. And so look forward to that happening, hopefully sometime soon. But I ran into them at SIGGRAPH and they offered to do that. So the ASWF, which is the Academy for Software Foundation, they also work with AOUSD. And what we're trying to do is actually for AOUSD and ASWF. So we are looking at joining them as associate members since we're a nonprofit and they're a nonprofit, and to help just better collaborate on initiatives. So, as an example, we just had the recent talk at SIGGRAPH about using O3D assets for USD, and that went extremely well. That talk did and was well received. And we just continue that. But that is how we are working with those two particular foundations. And then recently we started working with Drone Code Foundation as well. Now that's on this, of course, Drone Code is the simulation side of things, but mostly for drones. And we have someone by the name of Kimberly who has been doing a lot of experimental work in O3DE for drones for the Drone Code Foundation. So that we haven't figured out exactly how we're going to formally work with them yet. And that's something I need to talk to their ED about. But that tends to be how we collaborate. Now, we tend to join, as associate member foundations where we're wanting to strongly collaborate between the two. So ASWF and AOUSD make perfect sense for that because we have a need for them and they would like to see, another engine essentially implement, what they're doing or as another option. Now, for others like Drone Code, at least for now, it's mostly just a collaboration. There's not an official tie-in there yet. But I suspect we probably in 2026, we will create an official tie-in with Drone Code. Did that answer your question, Andre? Awesome. Okay, so this one's in here. I get it a lot, particularly. So the question from Jan is, can we expect any code from the Drone Code for simulations? Hopefully, yes. And we haven't gotten to that point yet. But Kimberly's doing a bunch of experiments in O3DE. So I suspect we will at least get a demo. There's a lot of talk about her creating a demo for Drone Code for O3DE. So I suspect we'll at least get that. But as far as code goes, yes, we would really like to get code, collaboration on code because currently we don't officially support drones, and it would be awesome if we did. I realized that was kind of a non-answer, which is just basically we're going to try and collaborate to that level where we're exchanging code back and forth. Okay, so this one's pretty much been answered, but how does the O3DF make money? Memberships and donations, and if you want to, so memberships are for companies, donations are for individuals, and here is the link to that page.
Joe, do you want to talk about kind of why we ended up doing the donation button?
Yeah, so donation, so right now there isn't an easy way for individuals to become a member of both the Links Foundation and our foundation. It's really oriented towards companies and larger entities to do that. So, we do have, several, 5-person companies that are members of our foundation, but as an individual, there really wasn't an option that was easy where you could just, take out your credit card and, donate however much you wanted to donate. Godot and Blender both are really good about the individual donations. And so we actually took a page from them. So we have now offered, so for individuals to make smaller amount donations to the foundation. What that allows us to do, if we get enough of those donations, is to contract people to handle things that the community wants done, but that no one's actually willing to work on. So that's generally where that money will go. Also, it'll go towards providing a fund for the people from the community to join me when I go to events and stuff like that, and various other opportunities as well. And then, and again, this is what tends to break a lot of companies' brains, is when I say we are a nonprofit. Our goal isn't to make money. A lot of companies don't understand it. I go, why you're sitting on, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of code. Why are you not charging for it? And it's because if you look at the industry as a whole, particularly for engines, companies struggle to stay afloat supporting a game engine. Well, basically being responsible for the creation and the additional features, etc. No one's really done a good job of that, even Unreal and Unity. So it just was a better bet to have this as open source so that the community can contribute to it. It removes the whole profit equation, and it provides an option for people, like, hey, I can use, I can pay for these, and there are advantages with those companies to pay for, but if I can use this, and then I will own the code outright as soon as I start using it. I can do anything I want to with it. There's no restrictions on how I use it. So again, that's why we went the open source route. So we've already covered the tiers. Any questions on that for the whole, how do we make money? Okay, so common question is, how is O3D doing? So we are actually doing very well right now. We have, as far as we are now on track for close to 200% growth of over 2024. We are very close to doubling our total numbers for the year. We've already beat last year. Last year's total downloads was around 52,000. This year, we're only in September, and we are already at close to 80,000 downloads. And we still have our biggest months left because October, November tend to be our largest download months of the year, and we still have those to go through. So I think we're going to easily double the numbers from 2024, and we will hit over 100K downloads this year. for just this year alone. The top 3 countries are China, US, and India in that order. India was, when I first started, they were like at 10th place as far as users go, and they've been just every month climbing, and now they're at 3rd place. And we just actually had a big announcement in India at the Open Source Summit that we now officially support the India region for O3DE. Let's see. Yeah, can you donate money to help move features along? Yes. By the way, any questions before I move on to my next set of questions? Okay. Something we see a lot on the Discord is how do I contribute and help support, a feature or help support O3DE through code? Well, the biggest steps are join our Discord and take a look at our GitHub. So we do have, and you can look through, we have a lot of in GitHub issues that are set as like good first contribution. What that means is that those are issues we feel that are self-contained enough and small enough for someone who's new to contributing to O3DE to be able to do so. We really, really take pride in having a community that is extremely supportive. We do not tolerate, contributors putting down other contributors for being new, or calling the code stupid or anything like that. Like, we don't allow for any of that at all. We take people as they are when they come in. We help grow people that are new. And, Nick has been amazing at that. And because Nick is basically, our lead architect for O3DE. So math, I'll get to your question here in a second. But what you do is look for one of those first issues and say like, oh, this looks interesting, I'll tackle that. And then if you have questions, I strongly urge you to join in Discord, the SIG that's responsible for that particular feature, where that issue is from, and you can have conversations with them. And then, do your first contribution. Do not be frightened or dismayed if you get a lot of comments on it. That's normal, particularly for your first few PRs or pull requests into the code base, because you're learning about the standards, you're learning about the how we expect things implemented, etc. And that's totally fine. No one will be rude or obnoxious, about their comments. And then, and use it as a learning opportunity. Once that is done, feel free, then, once the reviewers have said, yep, this looks good, then a maintainer will then determine like, okay, is this good enough for me to push that button to get this into the code base? But please don't be shy about trying to contribute. Not everything will go in, and this is perfectly normal. Now, for big features, if you're comfortable enough to be like, hey, I want to work on a feature for O3DE, that requires what we call a request for comment. And what that is essentially there's a template, and you're answering questions before they're even asked by having that request for comment up. And it allows, so you talk about your feature, what your plan is for implementation, why this feature is useful, what happens if this feature isn't implemented in O3DE, etc. And then that allows for discussion. It stays up for several weeks for on the repo of whatever SIG is responsible for it. And then you'll respond to comments that the people have about your feature. And then eventually, once you've satisfied, a majority of the people, then it will, get approved, and then you can officially start working on it. Now, you can work on it unofficially, and I really strongly urge people to do so when they have an RFC up, to get like a prototype up to prove your point, etc. Because prototypes are wonderful for taking something that is, just in your head and getting it in a point where people can actually look at it and go, oh, okay, now we see what you're trying to do. This makes sense. So, so you could do a prototype while the RFC is running, but you can't submit anything until after the RFC is approved for that feature. Any questions on that? Or did I confuse or get anything wrong there? Okay. Math just asked O3D Con event sometime this year or next. Not this year. Next year, if our budget permits, events are expensive. Our budget's pretty tight. So that's the reason we haven't done one recently. It's purely a budgetary issue. Once we get the money to be able to do that, I definitely want us to do another O3D Con. And I think we have a lot more users, a lot more interest than we did for the last O3D Con. So I think there'll be a lot larger turnout this time. We just have to figure out a good venue for it that's not super expensive. Did I answer your question, Math? Awesome. Let's see.
I may
Already
have
answered.
missed this, but did we
Yeah.
we answered Jan's question regarding the drone code, correct? Okay, we didn't. I thought we might have missed it. So Jan asked, can we expect any code from drone code for simulation?
Yeah, I answered that.
Oh, perfect. Sorry,
So,
I apologize.
Yeah, no. And then the answer there was we're working towards collaboration, but we haven't determined anything official yet. Kimberly's been doing experiments with
Yes,
O3DE. But and that's leading us towards and I've already talked with Ramon, who is the executive director for Drone Code, and they're definitely interested in collaborating closer with us. It's just we got to figure out what does that look like and how do we do it. So.
Sounds good. I apologize for missing that. And then Andre has put in the chat about the growth of downloads in China and India. It is known how O3D has been used, game sim, etc. Is it known? Also a bit curious if there's anything known from Latin America.
So for China, definitely one of our board members is Huawei. They do a lot of their own talk about O3DE with China. China is interesting because of the Great Firewall. So we actually do have a WeChat channel for China specifically, and we actually do have a separate entity that's for the Asia Pacific region that handles a lot of our communication, et cetera. There, I went to Hong Kong last year as well and talked about O3DE quite a bit there. China is interesting though, because really what you need in China is a company. Well, you have to have, it's actually a requirement, a company that is Chinese based that does a lot of this work for you. And because Huawei is a board member, they're a premier member, they do a lot of that for us as well. And then we basically though just put out translated documentation. So every time we do a giant press release or anything, we translate that for China, and then that gets PR'd out in China. But for China, what's really led to a lot of our growth is that Unity has fractured their user bases by having a separate version of the engine in China with different features than is available to the rest of the world. And that, ticked off a lot of people in China. And so they've been using O3DE as an alternative because of that. And then also from Latin America, I do have those numbers not right in front of me. They're in the top 10 for sure for Latin America. I just can't tell you specifically where they fall in the top 10, but I do know that they are there. Brazil in particular, and Mexico does show up, but not super high. And so, yeah, that is an area that we should be trying to penetrate in 2026. And then for China, for India, so when we were announced at the India Open Source Summit, we talked about the pillars for O3DE and, the games, simulation, robotics, and film and video. there. And a lot of people are super excited. And there is precedence because the Lumberyard, which also was created by Amazon, was actually used for some film and video stuff in India. There's particular films, because I actually helped work on that. So, so there is precedence for us being used in industries in India. And there was a lot of interest at that summit. Let's see. We already answered that question. So when will the particle system be released? Well, it is in development as of yesterday. Is that correct, Nick? Yeah, so it's in development. It will unfortunately not make the release for October, our 2510 release, just because it's not ready for that. And we don't want to introduce something to users that's as raw as the particle system is. But if you can use the development binaries and install that. Those are built every night. And it's a good way to see a preview of like, here's all the stuff that's, being worked on for O3DE. Or you'll need to wait until we start doing the stabilization branches for the 26, 4, or 5, depending on when we actually release, April or May. Yeah, it's definitely not ready for production, but it's ready for people to play with, give feedback on, report bugs and issues and things like that, but it is not ready for production use, which is why we're not releasing it for the October release. And thank you, Nick, for all the work you did in helping to get that into development. Yeah, it's a very exciting feature for us because it was one of our big gaps that we had. Let's see, we already talked about USD. We already talked about Linux versions. Oh, what are the plans for future O3D Connects? Well, for any other questions about the particle system before I move on to talking about O3D Connects. Okay, so for O3D Connects going forward, so October's is actually going to be from Porcupine Factory, and they'll be talking about their gem that they just created. Yeah, physics-based grab gem. So they'll be talking about that the next one. We're still figuring out after October what they will be. We have a couple of ideas. We've had a couple of people who've said, hey, I'd be interested in talking about X. We'll get that, figured out. And if you, on O3D org under the Connect page, you'll see like, here are all the topics we're gonna talk about. And we really want to get Pixar in to talk about USD, in the engines as one of the connects. Like I said, they volunteered to do it. So we're just kind of figuring out what's a good time that works for them to be able to do that. And that'll be a fun one. I'm looking forward to that one. So, but they are always the second Wednesday of the month, 8 a.m. Pacific time.
And just want to call out that JT has dropped something in the chat talking about the Discord reorganization.
Yep.
JT, you're actually right on par with this. So I would be sending a message in the announcement channel noting what's coming, just so everybody knows today. And then Guyan and I will be walking through the reorg tomorrow. So you all will see some updates on the Discord channels.
Right. So why are we doing the reorg of Discord? It wasn't because, we decided we didn't like the current version. The problem we're having is we're growing so fast that our moderators and myself cannot keep up with the growth with the current way that Discord was organized. So Guyan, who is one of our chief moderators, essentially, for lack of a better word, put together a plan for like, look, here's how we can reorg to make it easier to stay on top of everything that's going on, to deal with the rampant user growth we're currently seeing, and to still keep up the quality of our Discord communication and the collaborative nature, for Discord. And that's one thing that we will not allow to change, is that collaborative nature. It is very, very important for an open source project. And so that's why we're making these changes. It's just because the growth is kind of outstripping how we are currently organized. It's a good problem to have, but it is something we have to solve. And Guyan has done an amazing job for planning this out, getting feedback, and communicating the plan. Let's see. Okay, another question. This is the final question. Is what's the best way to get started building a robotic simulation in O3DE? So the best way to do this is to actually go to our O3D Extra server. I'll paste the link here. And then you will see, then go to gems. And then you'll scan it to see a whole bunch of different packages that are underneath that, including a warehouse simulation demo, the ROS packages, and the components for simulation. That'll all be on our extras repo. And that's really the best way to get started, because there's instructions there. There's full installation. The other thing is on YouTube. I don't have the link super handy. I saw Jan was in here. I don't know if he still is. It doesn't look like it. So anyways, there's a YouTube video that explains how to set up O3DE for doing simulations. It's in our YouTube channel. So I will send the link to our YouTube channel. And it's in here. And you'll see it's O3DE for simulations. And it's what the one that Jan did that gives you instructions on how to set up. It's a very, very good talk on that. I am out of questions at this point. I'm going to take the silence as a people are happy with this. So Naomi, I think we can close out